This is the chilling case of missing Mama Kristin Smart. On this date, January 2nd, 2000, Kristin packed her car and drove off to meet her boyfriend, Chris. Just a normal day in what appeared to be a normal life. But things were about to get very abnormal. Because when she didn't show up that night, her mom Pam became worried. So she called all their favorite spots, but none of them had seen her. What had happened to Kristin? But then the next morning, there was a break in the case. Her car was found parked near a college campus where she'd gone to school. And with it, a few clues. First, inside the car, they found a live puppy. No food or water, just a live puppy. Next, they found lipstick marks all over the car, as well as a crow skull and a tarp. Now, why would anyone put a crow skull inside a car? It doesn't make any sense. And with no sign of Kristin anywhere, police began to suspect foul play. Their main suspect was a man named Robert Jason Owens, a drifter who'd been living in his van in the area, and detectives wanted to question him. But when they tracked him down, he'd already left town. Owens told authorities he'd met Kristin at a bar the night before, but insisted they'd only talked and nothing more. But there was one problem with that story. Two witnesses came forward claiming they saw Kristin leaving the bar with Owens. They'd seen him drive her to the college campus where her car was later found. But there was even more. A local resident also claimed she'd spotted a suspicious-looking van parked outside of Kristin's home on the night she disappeared. She said the same van that Owens had been driving. So clearly, Owens knew something about Kristin's disappearance. Police just needed to find him. Owens, however, remained on the run for almost 2 decades until one day in 2018, when he walked into a police station and confessed to killing Kristin. He claimed that on New Year's Eve, he'd been drinking heavily and got into a fight with her boyfriend, Chris. According to Owens, he didn't mean to kill Kristin, but in a fit of rage, he hit her with his van, then buried her body nearby. He led police to the spot where he claimed he'd buried her, and they brought in a cadaver dog. But unfortunately, they didn't recover any remains. However, even though he confessed, Owens refused to cooperate fully. He kept changing his story and contradicting himself. For example, in one telling, he said that Kristin had been in his van willingly, but then later said she'd been kidnapped by 3 men and he just happened to be one of them. And when pressed for answers, he eventually broke down and revealed another secret. After confessing, he allowed police to search his van. Inside, they found a bloody mattress. Apparently, he used it to transport her body. But when asked why, Owens said he didn't know. With this new evidence, police grew more confident in their theory that Owens was somehow involved in Kristin's disappearance. But there was still one big thing missing: her body. Without a body, police struggled to build their case against Owens. And without evidence of a crime, they couldn't charge him. As the years went on, Kristin's family never gave up hope. And finally, in 2021, police received a tip that led them to a new search site. There, they uncovered human remains, but they weren't able to identify them right away. However, once DNA testing confirmed it was indeed Kristin, people began to wonder, if she'd been dead all along, why did Owens wait 21 years to confess? Was he hoping her body wouldn't be found? Why did he admit to the crime at all? And what really happened to her? Owens' attorney argued that his confession wasn't valid because Owens wasn't read his rights beforehand. So maybe if a cop had just been nicer to him and given him a cookie, he might have spilled the beans sooner. But instead, police were forced to dig through a mountain of evidence, trying to piece together what really happened to Kristin. And after all those years, they finally had an answer. Or did they? You see, once charged with murder, Owens' story changed yet again. He now claimed that he acted in self-defense, and that Kristin attacked him first. According to Owens' new account, after dropping Kristin off at the bar, her boyfriend Chris showed up unexpectedly and confronted him. An argument ensued, then a fight broke out, and during the struggle, he accidentally hit her with his van. In a panic, he then transported her body in his van and buried her nearby. But was that true? Or was Owens' story once again changing to protect himself? How many stories had he told by this point? 2 conflicting witness accounts claimed that Chris was nowhere near the bar that night. One claimed he was at home playing video games, and another claimed he was at work. But perhaps most damning was that Owens had originally confessed without mentioning Chris at all. So was Chris innocent? Was Owens? And if so, why had he waited 21 years to come clean? Unfortunately, we may never know the answers to these questions. On March 3, 2022, Owen's 21-year-old daughter took the stand in his defense. She claimed that her father had told her since she was little that he'd been falsely accused of killing Kristin. It sounded like a bizarre claim from a bizarre person, but she insisted that her dad had been framed. Had he made a huge mistake and confessed to a crime he didn't commit? Perhaps. But if so, why? Her testimony ended up being enough to convince the jury that Owen's story was true. In other words, they believed that he killed Kristin accidentally, meaning that he wasn't guilty of murder. Instead, he was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 23 years in prison. And in the end, we may never know what really happened. Who was telling the truth? What really happened the night Kristin disappeared? And why did Owens confess only to change his story in court? There are simply too many conflicting accounts and not enough solid leads. All we know for sure is that on January 2, 2000, a young woman disappeared after a night out with friends. Her body was found 21 years later, and a man confessed to the crime. But whether he was lying or not, whether he acted alone or with others, we may never know. Now, watch.